No. Woo!
Success sauce! It's here.
I'm looking live at the Success Sauce Contest. Intro music. Woo! Easter time. We're going. You ready for the holiday, Mike?
I'm ready, Jack.
You ready?
I'm ready.
What's happening big? What's happening big at the Denker house for the holiday?
Oh, it's big. We don't. We do little dinners at our house. We do not do big dinners, generally speaking. But this Easter, we're gonna have 18 people over, and we got some Mainers coming in. We've got some folks that just moved to Coral Gables, our neck of the woods, from California. So they're kind of separated from their family. So they're coming up. All of our kids, and 3 kids, 2 stepsons, a girlfriend, and 4 grandkids. So my brother-in-law, his girlfriend, and her parents, and that might be everybody. But so it's there's a lot going on. It's very exciting.
What's the total head count you got?
I think we have 18.
18 folks coming for Easter. Well, that'll be exciting. You'll need some de-stressing Sunday night for you.
But what's interesting is that it's funny that it's really interesting because we're going to talk about personalities today, and when you think about 18 people coming into the room, 18 personalities, right? And even your own children, when you say, oh, we're all going to be mixed, well, at least no, man, my kids are different too. Like everybody's different.
Yeah.
And it's so cool how, it really is the core of our show today's personality, I think. And I think that it really is, we are our personality, but how do we up our game?
Amen. Yeah. So welcome to the show. It is Easter weekend. And so I hope everyone has good plans. I am going to brunch, my wife down here on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. So appreciate everybody joining us. Hope you have great weekend plans. And I want to welcome everybody to the show. Success.
Wait a minute. Wait. You're having brunch with your wife, brunch for 2, nobody else?
That's it. We don't know many people. Nope, just we're brunching together. That's it.
And you're not cooking? Nobody's cooking?
No. We're going to have the opposite. So we're doing the opposite of the Dankers. We're going couple restaurant. So we will having exact opposite. I was going to say, I bet you I'll be less stressed Sunday night, but you never know. You actually never know.
Yeah, don't lay that one out for option.
Good luck. Good luck to you. And hope everyone has a great Easter. And so appreciate everyone joining the show because we're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic. How do you become a millionaire? So that is obviously a hot topic, particularly where folks are trying to get to the next level. And so, the show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? So we're going to talk about that. What are the traits? A study came out a week ago, published in the Inc. magazine. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. There's actually the headline of the article. I think it actually was published late last week via Inc. And so we have really spent, if you've been following the show the last couple of months, just talking about what are the traits that achieve success. And so we're going to dive into that today as we endeavor to help folks kind of get to the next level. And so before we do that, I also want to remind folks we're sponsored by I.Help.
I.Help.
Yes, we're really blessed this year to be sponsored by I.Help. And if you're unfamiliar, you see the scroll. There's a scroll at the bottom. Literally, the URL is I.Help. Amazing. It will be the platform of the future as we go to this new kind of a hybrid work model where folks are not as many shows and not doing so much face-to-face. It's, hey, how do you get all of your stuff to your contacts in one space and one spot? And you see that right there on the screen. Your web conferencing. You can online schedule. By the way, whatever web conference platform you use, they'll connect to it. So you don't have to change to I.Help's platform. Whatever you use, they'll connect to. Folks can schedule online. You can do electronic payments, send those large files. We've all sent an email when the file's too big and it gets kicked back to us. You can actually upload files on I.Help and share them. All your social media stuff all in one spot, your podcast videos. If you have a company website, your personal website, all of those things, imagine in one spot. So when you're interacting with folks, particularly in a sales world or sales environment, or if you have a customer-facing entity of what you're doing, literally you just say, hey, go to I.Help/Jack, or you can attach it to any URL you want. So I.Help, the wave of the future, $5 a month. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. Go to i.help, I always say, get your tagline now, get your URL so no one takes it. You can be i.help/Jack and no one has to take it. Down the road, you'll have to be Jack is great or #1 Jack. So go to i.help, give up, what do they always say, a Starbucks coffee, and go get your i.help account. Thank you for the folks at i.help for sponsoring the show. Appreciate that.
I was just thinking, Jack, do we do it now? Because somewhere in the near future, somebody's going to call it the i.help. And you know that's when you miss the boat. Yeah. And so when your grandma's on looking for the i.help, it means that i.help's super successful, but you missed the boat to find your URL because that boat sailed.
So true. Look, folks, what they're doing, all the folks have their account at the bottom of their email. It says connect with me, i.help, or whatever URL it is. And folks can go there and all your stuff, it sounds odd, but all your stuff is in one spot. Amazing platform, amazing idea, wave of the future. Get on now. Don't be one of those people like, I just got my Twitter account. So go get your i.help account, $5, invest in yourself. What is that? 5 times 12, $60 a year. Go do your thing. Amazing, amazing. Good. So appreciate the folks at i.help. And then, the impetus for today's show is I was scrolling through my own personal social media. Inc. Used to be Inc. magazine, but Inc.'s media presence now, I'm not even sure they print the magazine, released this study about success. And it's like, hey, what are the traits that we've been talking about for the last couple of months to make someone a millionaire? What are self-made millionaires? What are the 5 top traits that help folks be a millionaire? And so that kind of fit right in with what we've been discussing for many, many weeks here. And so, wow, we should deep dive on it because that's what particularly young folks are like, how do I get there? Because the stat is, it's actually in the article, half of Americans tell pollsters that they want to become rich. Half of Americans are obsessed, quasi-focused on the dynamic of being rich. And what a better segue than to say, here are the 5 traits that'll help you be rich, right, Mike? Like those, what a great, that's a question you get from at least half the population.
And it makes sense because, some of them, conscientious is one of them, the ability to do what you say and say what you do. It's one of those things that we hear that in our 20s and we go, what do you know? What do you know? What do you know? And then sure enough, the people that really become famous for being really rich, they're also famous because people do business with them on a handshake. People do business with them on what they said they were. They said they're going to show up. They expect them to show up and they'll bank on them showing up. And that's that conscientiousness. When you say you're going to do something, do it. Yeah. And if you if your reputation says you're somebody that gets it done most of the time, you're not setting yourself up to be one of these millionaires. Apparently half of everybody wants to be.
Yeah. And I would say for folks that are maybe just tuning in for the first time, when we talk about success, which is really been the focus of the show, hey, how do you get to success? We don't really talk about money because sometimes the money doesn't bring the success, right? Folks think it's the money and then it brings consternation, or once they have the money, it's not what they thought it would be. And so we've really been talking about, hey, how do you get to whatever you perceive is success or what brings peace in your life? But today we are going to be a little more money focused because the study came out. And so, again, normally the show is not like, oh, how do you get all the money you want? Because I just want to say up front as our disclaimer, the money doesn't necessarily bring happiness. So if you are one of those people you think it does, plenty of stories out there on the internet. You can see that there's not a high correlation between money and happiness or peacefulness, quote unquote success. So just want to say that up front. But it was really interesting when Inc. came out this magazine. So let me give you the sentence how they kind of summarize the traits of self-made millionaires. They studied over 20,000 folks, long study. And so then we'll break them down one by one. But the sentence they put out, I'll just read it verbatim. It's like, the folks that made it tended to be more risk tolerant, were more open, they were extroverted, they were conscientious, and they were less neurotic is the word they used in the study. Hence, emotionally stable. They were less neurotic. And so those were the traits. And you know what's interesting about the study is, and then we'll break down, number one, we'll talk about risk tolerant. But the study is they studied 20,000 people over a significant amount of time. So it's not like you can just go tomorrow and be like, oh, here's the traits. You look at someone's personality, they examine them, the test, all the things they do. And so it's really, really foundationally interesting to find out the traits of a successful millionaires. And then we'll talk about, hey, if you don't have them, can you develop them? So when you hear risk tolerant, Mike, risk tolerant 101, what comes to mind?
Well, head first is the image that comes to mind, right? That I'm risk tolerant. I can handle risk. Do I dip my toe in the shallow end or do I go head first in the deep end? But risk tolerant also means, that I'm willing to take risks, but I'm not a daredevil, right? A lot of people that do really crazy things. What's the fellow's name that does all the adventure? Bear Grylls.
Yeah.
Bear Grylls always, he talks about, I'm very risk averse, he says, which blows my mind. But he says, I am incredibly prepared.
Yes.
We have prepared ourselves for not just what we expect to happen, but we've tried to consider every crazy variable that could happen as we go out and do these, what we look on and see is just crazy things. And so preparation, right? He uses preparation and experience to what we would say increases risk tolerance, but he's actually he's increased his capacity to handle risk. And so I think it's really interesting that he's somebody that inspired me to take planning much more seriously.
Bear Grylls?
Bear Grylls, because life is like that. Like he's facing life that has crazy life or death variables, and he's mostly calm about it because he's ready for it. And so I realize there's some things that happen in my life from time to time, and like I get surprised by the same thing again. Like I just want to make sure I'm not surprised by the same thing twice, right? Like, I didn't like how that happened. And so I would say that I went through a phase probably in my 40s where I think my risk tolerance was going down, but I think I got burned maybe here or there, and this went bad, and I started, but then I realized that, well, maybe I just didn't do. So now I said, wait, what can I do differently? I'm trying to be more prepared, and I'm more, I'd say, more adventurous at taking on new challenges now.
Yeah, and I think when folks talk about risk tolerant, I want to be really clear, especially when you look at this study in depthly, if you see it or read through it, it's not like, hey, I want to go put all my money into an adventure, jump off a cliff, go skydiving. It's like, hey, are you risk tolerant? Because what happens, we've all seen this meme, I think probably most of you that are chasing success. It's like, hey, failure doesn't kill most dreams. The inability to want to take the risk to go after it, right? It's not, oh, I went after it and I failed. It's I never did anything, right? It's being, oh, I'm so afraid and I don't want to risk anything. I don't want to, I don't want to step out of my comfort zone. And so really when they talk about this, it's being willing to put a little on the line, not jump off a cliff. We're not talking about this major, like, oh, you have to risk all your money and max out all your credit cards and, leave your wife or leave your spouse and go all in and risk, move halfway across the world. It really is just the ability, as you just said, like take strategic risks, be smart about it, and the ability to kind of look at things and be like, oh, I've now managed all the expectations. You start out, it's today's entrepreneurial environment. You can start out with a side hustle, right? And make sure that goes before you quit your job and do those kind of things. So the risk tolerant thing, folks see it sometimes like, well, yeah, I'm not, I'm risk adverse, but they're really talking about like strategic risk, like you said, like Bear Grylls, like let's take strategic risk. And in that, especially in today's environment, you don't have to do it like the old days. Everyone's like, well, I maxed out to quit my job and maxed out my credit cards, And so, just think, look, somebody else calling me about.
Well, what's interesting is that, if you don't know what to do, we've never lived in a time that was so easy to learn something.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what we do though is we learn a lot of things quickly, which means we learn nothing deeply. And so what we need to do is, right. So I heard somebody tell me the other day, they've been spending 2 years learning how to do shorts and puts and options. And he said that in the middle of the story, he said, I lost $60,000 in the first year trying to figure everything out, but now I'm super confident. I said, the book you read was the same book I read. He's like, what's that? I go, the one that says you should paper trade for the first year. Because if you paper trade for the first year, you can learn the whole thing for free. Yeah. And he said, basically paper trading is you just use fake money. You just use monopoly money, and you keep track of what you would have done if you used your real money, losses and gains, and you keep learning. And but the guy that wrote that book says in the next sentence, I know you won't do it. He goes, I highly recommend paper trading to everybody that takes my class. I know you won't do it. And so it's such a
you get the big win. You get the big win in the paper, and you're like, oh, it could have been real, right? So.
Right. And it's like, yeah, but the big loss is coming because you don't know everything yet, right? So if we took the time to really learn whatever we think the gap is, there's never been a time in history where you could, whatever you think the knowledge gap is in your life, you could conquer that knowledge gap faster, deeper, with more input from more expert sources than ever before. And so, sometimes people are just afraid to commit to a thing, right? What's the thing I'm going to figure out? I don't want to commit. I want to, and that's, what's that acronym? FOMO, right? Fear of missing out.
Amen.
I'm afraid to commit to one thing because then the good thing might go right by me. And what's so funny is like, just commit to go down that road.
Yeah.
It's so many things we talk about, Jack, are about the journey, right? And so people are so freaked out about picking the wrong destination. Listen, all the excitement and fun in your whole story is in the journey anyway. Just get in the journey, pick a journey and start. And then listen, every journey has turns, right?
Definitely. Look, be more risk tolerant, right? Be strategic risk. So I don't want anyone to be like, strategic risk is out there. So the folks that made it, self-made. So these are all folks that didn't come from money, managed to get to $1 million where they were more risk tolerant. So that's number one.
Oh, Jack, I think that was an interesting point about the people because they talked about inherited money.
Right. None of this.
So this is not the traits of people that have money.
Right.
Because people that inherited money didn't share these traits.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurs that hadn't become millionaires yet did share these traits. So these are the traits that have the stuff, right? If you're working towards success entrepreneurially, these are the traits you have. You're on the way.
Yes. Yeah. There's not people that got their money from Daddy Warbucks and inherited. These are folks that came basically from nothing and managed to achieve, again, financial success. And so the second one was being an extrovert. So a couple of weeks ago, if you follow the show, we talked about charisma, right?
Yeah.
In the middle of March, we talked about having charisma, being charismatic, similar, right? This extrovert, the ability to kind of want to reach out, speak, and maybe, again, not on stage, because I think sometimes folks are like, oh, I don't want to do public speaking. A lot of being an extrovert is the ability to connect with people, the ability to build relationships, go to networking events in your company, the ability to create relationships and share and be willing. That's actually being risk tolerant as well. Be willing to put yourself out there, share your story, go have lunch with somebody, pour into them. And so the ability to be an extrovert and like connect with people is huge variable no matter what you want to do, because ultimately, somebody's got to tell the story. And so if it's not you, you need a mouthpiece for you that can tell your story about your idea, about what you do well. Somebody's got to let the world know of your extremely good skill set.
Yeah. That movie Field of Dreams was a great watch. It's really a good movie. I loved it. But what a bunch of, that is not going to help you in your entrepreneurial quest. You build it, they ain't coming, right? They're not coming.
Not today's environment, definitely.
No way. You can build the best mousetrap on the planet. They're not coming if you don't tell them about it.
Yeah.
And so somebody's got to build the mousetrap. Somebody's got to tell the world about the better one. You have to have both. And I love what you said, Jack, that, one of the things we might talk about today is the traits. And if you don't have them, how can you get them?
Yeah.
But, one of the things to do is you can hire somebody that has them. Right. If you don't have some of these traits, I remember I went to one of those seminars once and I loved it. The guy says, get this. What's the fastest way to get a PhD? And everybody raised their hand. He goes, listen, I can beat that by 2 years. I can get it tomorrow. He's like, well, how do you do that? He goes, I'm going to hire somebody with a PhD. You know what I mean? I just love that. It's like, it's so awesome. And I think that there's so much in that if you're building your business, don't try to be all things, right? If you're trying to build, even if you're trying to build just a better you in a career, don't try to be all things. There's parts of this that other people can help you with. Look for the help. Look for the help that you need to succeed.
The companies always do the build versus buy, right? So somebody's going to tell your story, typically in self-made millionaires, because the early days, no one's around. Like everyone's on board once it's successful. But day two, when you have some idea, you're doing some venture, you build some product, or you're trying to be in entertainment, there's very few people around. You have to be able to tell folks what you're doing and how you're doing it. So that was number two. So it's risk tolerant, extrovert. And the third was interesting. So it's being open or openness, which I thought was really interesting. And so they actually in the article go through and explain most about this trait, because open can mean a lot of things, right? And so they talk about when you're open, not only do they talk about being a self-made millionaire, being successful, they also correlate it to being creative. So people that are open are more creative. They're typically more intelligent because they're very they're open to learning and they're very inquisitive. And which was very, very interesting, the tie they made, they actually age better. They age and they're less likely to get dementia and some of the things that happen as we get older. And so openness, and which comprises kind of being extrovert and being more risk tolerant, like open to new things, new ideas, not so tense and locked in and I know it all. Being openness was the third trait.
You know, and I love that because there's so many different, I mean, a lot of people know the word sophisticated. Fewer people know the word sophist, right? Which is another term for attorneys or debaters.
Yeah.
But it really comes from a sophist. In law school, you have to learn how to argue both sides well, or any side well, right? To be an attorney, and you have to learn how to argue both sides and make a winning argument from your perspective. And so sophisticated is from that same root, which means I'm able to take on different points of view. I'm able to consider this from, and think about how much people like to be around you when you can consider their point of view, right? When you can dignify them, when you go, well, you know what? That's really an interesting point. I literally don't have to agree with your point to dignify you, but I do have to give you I just have to dignify you enough to give you my time and energy to listen to you and hear your point, and let's consider it together.
Stephen Covey, listen, 7 habits, right? First, seek to understand before being understood. And I would just say in today's culture, climate, social media-centric world, media-centric world, that is not the case, particularly in our political environment. The ability to try to understand before being understood, we are lacking that greatly. And this skill set, right, it's interesting. Can you learn to be more open? Is very of an interesting concept we'll talk a little bit about. But openness was the third one. Like folks, again, are more creative, they're typically more intelligent, and they age better. So if you don't even want to be a millionaire, the ability to be more open and accessible can be amazing for your overall life. So forget if you don't want to be a millionaire. God bless. The fourth one was being more conscientious, which is also an interesting concept. Like who wouldn't want to be, more conscientious? But I think it's not true. I think a lot of people, we've all met people, we're like, I just don't like that person. They seem of ill will. And so it's very interesting that being conscientious and maybe a more moralistic, a well-intended person can be part of helping you get there. You would think that's a little counterintuitive in this dog-eat-dog world of like, just get yours and screw everybody else, right?
Well, a little bit of in the article, it's not as much about moral compass as it was about say what you do. Like, are you a person of your word, right? I mean, you could be doing all anyway. We may not be morally aligned, but are you somebody that you say you're going to do it by Tuesday? Are you going to get it done by Tuesday? And are you willing to sacrifice to meet your commitment? And I think that's we're all willing to meet commitments that don't require sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like, I think that nobody said, I'll be there by Tuesday. I'll have it done by Tuesday 5. No problem. Nobody meant not to get it done. But in the middle, somewhere 3 days, 2 or 3 days from now, you're like, well, this came up, or somebody had free concert tickets, or I got a chance to go to dinner with so-and-so. And well, if you made a commitment, the person that's conscientious may say, sorry, I made a commitment. I can't go to that concert. Yeah. I'm sorry, I made a commitment. I can't do that thing that I would love to do, but I'm going to have to sacrifice that to make sure I meet my commitment, that conscientiousness. And so it's funny that you're not conscientious 20 seconds before the deadline, right? You're conscientious from the time you made the commitment to the time you fulfill the deadline, right? It's one of those things that you can't. I'm a guy that used to cram in college a lot, right? I read on a door, somebody wrote on the door, if it's not due in 24 hours, it's just not due. Yeah. That became my anthem in college, but that's not the way life works, right? Too many curveballs, life isn't like college. College, you can maneuver pretty easily compared to life. But in life, the stakes are much, much higher. And you're dealing with people that you're dealing with a lot of different variables. And so when you say, I'm going to do it, there's a lot, you're saying a lot, but I was thinking about this the other day. The people that are rich, the people that I know, and the people when I think about rich, I can't, I'm millionaires, but rich is, 100 million, a billion, and And there's some people in the mix that I see and know, not dinner tonight, but I know, and I realize that their word is their bond. Yeah. And it seems like they've got nothing but free time sometimes in their life. Like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm like, how do you do all that? Like, but if they said they were going to be someplace on a Thursday and it meant not going to Paris, they're going to be wherever they said they were going to be on Thursday.
Well, you know, it's interesting too. We started the year when we started this new series about goal setting, right? We started the year about, hey, what are your goals and goal setting? And I think one of the things that sticks with me during that process, we had a series of guests on. We had about 8 guests on that talked about goal setting and the elements of it and how it works and goods and bads. And it's certain, you know, we did do women do it differently and people with ADHD and long-term goals and short-term goals. And one of the things that stuck with me always about that is having the emotional maturity to like know the goal you set is not the right goal and be able to realign it. And so part of this conscientious was also like, hey, it's not, just to be really clear, it's not like set a goal and no matter what, you know, go to it, even if it is in not your best interest, it's not in your family's best interest. But if you're conscientious enough to articulate back to people, hey, the goal we set last quarter is not going to happen, owning that's what we're lacking as society, like owning the process. It's not saying, hey, lock in forever, no matter what, you have to do everything you just said. If you realize along the way, like Gary Vee's big on this, right? If you realize along the way, hey, this is not great, it is really mature and conscientious to like, hey, we're going to pivot now. I'm going to let everyone know. And you take the blowback that comes with it. It's okay. Like, because we as a society try to like deflect. Oh, I'm changing. I didn't want to do it. It wasn't real. Right. And just the ability to own it and be peaceful and confident. What's crazy about that, it just draws people because we're in such a society where people want to deflect and not really, you know, own their stuff and want to blame others and, you know, what have you, change the topic. The ability to just own it, describe why, and articulately tell folks is amazingly powerful and actually draws people in way more than folks feel like, oh, I did something wrong, everyone's going to hate me. Just not the case, right?
You know, I agree with that 100%, Jack. And I just want to add to that the time you realize you're not going to meet your commitment is so rarely the time you tell the other party, right? And so that when you realize that moment is the highest value time to communicate to them.
Yeah.
And the value diminishes greatly as time passes. And if you tell them in the 11th hour, when you knew in the first hour, you blew an opportunity to use words like mature, responsible, right? That those are so true that you can miss. But if they find out you knew this 4 days ago and you didn't tell me till now it's just going to pile on. So really you can't put this off and make it better. Yeah. And it's not going away. So when you realize probably not going to make this commitment, you should definitely pick up the phone, send an email, text in that moment. Right, to bring them up to speed, because that professionalism will also, it's not as good as meeting your commitment, but sometimes when you meet most of your commitments and that's the way that you handle a miss, the most professionally way possible, it's not a miss anymore.
Yeah, what do they say? Characters revealed during, you know, challenging circumstances. Characters revealed, right? It's not made. And so just a quick sidebar, I just encourage folks, like normally success of the 4, we'll talk about a quick sidebar. It's like doing the opposite. Folks around me all the time hear this. Like when we feel like, oh, I want to hide this and not tell people. It's exact. You're trying to get there. Doing it opposite draws people. They know you're open and honest and vulnerable because we all are. We all make mistakes. We all have insecurities, and the ability to share that, people, you know, typically are very drawn to that. Not everybody. There will be some people that want to take your head off, but most people are like, oh, I didn't love the outcome, but Bob was very honest about it. Mary told me right away. She owned it. And typically that creates a bond. If you think about your friendships, your best friends are all folks that went through the drama with you, not the folks who were around during the good times. And so encourage folks to be conscientious, go through the tough times together. And that openness, which was the one above it, right? So risk tolerant, extrovert, openness, conscientious, being open and sharing. This didn't go well. We're pivoting here. Can be very, very, very endearing, right? And then
Jack, if I get one more thing on that, I think it's so important that you know, we both talk about, if you put it out, when you share a truth about yourself with other people, when you do the sharing, that means it won't hurt you when somebody else does.
Hmm.
But if you try to hide and listen, the truth's coming out. If it comes from you,
Yeah.
it's Obama wrote the book. I just remember Obama, like whatever came out about Obama, he said, it's in the book. I already said it. All right. And so it was less damaging to have told the truth.
Oh my God. We're down.
Right? And the truth, and the Bible says the truth will set you free.
Yep.
Right. And we don't believe it. I've said it to myself, like, yeah, it might, but not this time. But then I go, all right, I'll do it anyway. And I tell the truth. And it's not like you mentioned, what'd you call it? Blowback. Listen, I've shared the truth and gotten tremendous blowback, but I recovered, and everything was better on the other side of the blowback than if I would have avoided the blowback somehow. It would.
Yeah, listen, get in front of it. Quick,
get in front of it. Good word.
Somebody that came out of the recovery world, the recovery world is amazing. If you've already said it out loud in front of a group, giving your testimony, no one's can use that against you, right? The enemy, the devil, the people against you want to use your secrets against you. If you get out in front of it, right? And politics, we see it where we see it public is politics. If you get out in front of it and say it before the newspaper reports it, you're typically good. When the newspaper says it, and then you're in scramble mode. But that works in your own life too. You get out in front of it, own your stuff, tell people. It's amazing the weight that comes off your shoulders. And so being conscientious and handling it well is the fourth trait. And the last being, they start with less neurotic, and then they go into explain it, which is really being emotionally stable, which is probably for me the hardest one to really put in a box, because I don't know too many people who think they're emotionally unstable or neurotic, but I think we all know folks that aren't. And so this, if you're trying to knock down these traits and is it or isn't it, I would encourage you to look outside yourself and ask your circle of friends that you trust for some honesty, because this is one of those, can be really hard to see. Hey, am I like crazy neurotic? Am I emotionally unstable? It can be a hard trait to see because we only know us. We spend all our time with us. We think about only us very much, all the time. And so it can be hard to see. Are you not as neurotic? Are you emotionally stable? It can be a hard one to self-assess.
It's amazing that it's also your, it's described a lot as your negative self-talk. Right. And so what keeps you from being people describe me as an extroverted person, but I've gone into rooms where I closed up into a shell because my self-talk, they don't want to talk to me. Whatever it was, I had negative self-talk and I did not have a good networking event. I didn't meet the people I wanted to meet because I talked myself out of it in the middle of the call. And it's so weird because if I walk into a room and just smile a lot, I generally can talk to people. It's just, but if I've had bad networking events, and I've also, talked myself out of trying to get a promotion. I've talked myself out of clients I was going to prospect for. I've talked myself out of just trying some new things sometimes. And the cool thing is that I've also talked myself into some pretty amazing things. And so but it can, like, there's every one of those setbacks. Where a lot of those were people would say it's self-induced. And I would say it could be self-induced, and it's self-induced through buying into your negative self-talk.
Yeah. Yeah. This, it's a question they ask, like, hey, are you emotionally stable? Are you less neurotic? And so if you're not sure, I say this to everybody, myself included, encourage you. We have this stigma today. It's come out, like NFL is doing an amazing job of like this, hey, good mental health. Like, how are you anxiety wise? And for years that's had, going to counseling and talking to a psychologist or, whatever you need, counselor, kind of have a little stigma to it. And I think organizations are trying to do a lot to kind of take that away. And I think almost if you're on a health plan, they have some counseling side of it. So encourage everybody, no matter, I don't care if you're killing it, you're struggling, to be able to talk to a third person who's not a friend. They have no agenda in your life. They're neutral as could be. Reaching out and having someone both, share some of the stuff maybe you're going through. They can also help you assess, your emotional stability. It can be so incredibly beneficial, particularly, listen, for those of you who think you're about to get married or, engaged, go through counseling with your soon-to-be spouse. Amazing part of the process. Somebody neutrally with no agenda can hear things you've said your whole life, probably to your friends, to your family, to people around you, your coworkers who know you all day. And when you tell a person that you talk to, doesn't know you deeply, they can give you such amazing feedback. And because they're professionally trained, they can give you some exercises too to help you grow in certain areas. When they see, hey, this is maybe a blind spot of yours, and here's an exercise, or here's something you can do to work on it, can be incredibly helpful. Encourage everyone, if you have any part of your health plan that offers counseling, go do it. It's amazing. And having someone professionally who's neutral talk into your life can be extremely rewarding.
Well, you know, two things really important, Jack, that what you said was, one was blind spots. As long as it's a blind spot, it goes unaddressed.
Yeah.
It's hindering your life. It's holding you back, and it goes unaddressed. And you don't know. That's the whole definition of a blind spot. You don't know you have it. We all have them until we resolve them, but we all have them. And so we've got to get that third party. And when you mentioned getting ready to get married, I can't help but say it, that there's a tool out there called Symbis, SYMBIS, Save Your Marriage Before It Starts. And that tool is so amazing. I did premarital counseling for folks for 20 years through church. And then I discovered this tool. And I had been counseling people generally, like in groups, generally, like, you know, this is important. And in general, this is important. In general, this is important. When they take this Symbis profile, they get to see who they are, right? Kind of some of the blind spots might be revealed. They get to see who the other person is. And then what's great is they see all the ways they align, and they see very small number usually of the things where they don't align, but they're worth talking about. And it's so great because really, in comparison, the old way of doing premarital, from my perspective, was sort of pontificating on marriage, right? And young people love to be pontificated at, right? Or now, let me take your information about you as an individual and apply it to any advice or wisdom I might share with you. It's going to be laser focused on who you are. And so I share that because I was blown. I've been in the middle of it for 20 years, and I've seen enhancements and advancements and things over the years. But when I became certified in that tool and started using it, it's just, you just feel from my chair, I feel great because I really feel like I'm helping that couple, as opposed to, I hope I help some of the couples I talked to this week. You know, it's just amazing. And so a little shout out there for that. If you're considering marriage, I want you to be successful at that as well.
Yeah. So we would let the 5 in this, again, in this study were risk tolerant, extrovert, openness, being conscientious, and emotionally stable, right? So those, again, that was the 5 traits most indicative of someone who was able to achieve financial success. And then they throw in this little bonus one, just for the record, although they didn't, you know, in the world of doctoral science, it has to be statistically valid. And so say that twice. Woo. The other 6th one they had that wasn't statistically valid
Which makes it anecdotal.
Right, would be slightly less agreeable. And I love that one because, again, I think today's society, there's a lot of, you just got to, especially in sales, you got to roll over. You got to, you know, just be this kind of walk over and tell them everything they want to hear. And I think people that make it are able to draw lines and be able to give people pushback. Just a quick sidebar, and that Mike and I both have career in sales, you know, but the sales rep that says everything's fine and yes, the yes person is not nearly the best sales rep. It's the one that's able to push back and be less agreeable. And so that was the kind of the 6th little throw in. They thought, you know, folks that made it out of nowhere were kind of less agreeable. So that was a little bonus they threw in.
I think it's super important too, because when you talk about being open, some people are afraid of being open because they're afraid they're going to be influenced and manipulated. And like, listen, if you have that seasoned with a little bit of less agreeableness, like, listen, I'm open to what you got to say. I'm going to ask some questions, right? Where I hear something that sounds not lining up with the way I see things, I'm going to point it out. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to challenge. And so, but it doesn't mean I'm not open, right? That I'm engaged, but that's a compliment that makes the two sophisticated sound scary. I'm just open to anything. No, I'm open to everybody. I'm open to everybody. That's what we need to be. It's not open to anything. Let's be open to everybody, right? And then if they say something, we get to ask questions. Don't tell them they're wrong. Ask them some questions where that came from. Like, get to know them. See, you'll learn so much faster about someone saying than actually, what do you think you're going to learn about somebody who goes, I don't agree with you at all. That's wrong. To, that's an interesting point of view. Where do you think the foundations of that are?
Yeah, where'd that come from?
Right? Where'd that come from? Then you might hear about their childhood. You might hear about their some antics in high school. Who knows? But you never know what you're going to hear from someone when you're trying to discover who they are through some fun questions.
Yeah. And as we get near the end of the show, we talked about it along the way, but if you go through these traits, risk tolerant, extrovert, openness, conscientious, emotionally stable, and like, oh, 2 of them are not me. So then the study really goes a long way in talking about, hey, you do have the ability to add those traits. They go into deep dive. They talk about, as much as science can tell you what makes you successful, science also says, although there's some of it's genetic, like they own that, there's part of it you are born how you are. They also talk about, it's been studied ad nauseum, that, hey, you can add character traits. You can add things to your life. You can add skill sets, sometimes in just a couple of weeks. So as much as they talk about these traits, if they're not embedded into you and they're important to you, that being the most important, is it important to you? Like the other day, I had a career thing when one of my mentors in life kind of got to me, and there's some changes going on. He's like, we could go learn from . That would certainly be different from your core operational model. Contemplate on that for about 2 weeks. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Like the trait that I was going to go pick up, I'm like, I don't even want that trait. I don't want to add that to my tool. That trait that I'm gonna get from I don't want that trait. So the ability, we do have the ability to add things. Maybe you can't go from total introvert to being on the stage Tony Robbins. Maybe you can, but you can certainly move down the road to being better at those skill sets, because these are the things that will help you achieve. If you're really chasing financial success, those are the traits that get you there.
You know what? It was really cool so there's somebody, I read an article, and it was really an in-depth article. It had a bunch of sources on kind of improving or changing your traits. And it says the best known expert on personality change is Brent Roberts, a psychologist at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. If you want to check this out, check out Brent Roberts. But also, it's so funny, he talked about some of the things that one was invite somebody that you're afraid that's sort of in your second tier of relationships, invite them out for drinks and be willing to be the assertive one twice, right? Because how you say, yeah, somebody out to lunch, and then that text falls off the radar, or the email falls short, or you left a voicemail and they don't call you back. Your self-talk says they don't want to have lunch with you. They don't want to have lunch with you. Well, this study's so great because they go, people are just busy, right? People are just busy and forget. They saw your text, they forgot it. Maybe they didn't at first glance really go, do I really want to have lunch with them? I don't really know them that well. But it just says, make sure you just try again. Just try a second time. Take a shot, miss, try again. If you said you'd be surprised by just taking the second shot, how many times you start having meals and coffee with people that were out there. And I thought, wow, what a great, simple, easy way to become more extroverted, right? To add people into your mix without saying, well, I'm going to go, because the other one of them was like take an improv class. That's a heavy commitment. It's way easier to send a text, get blown off, and send another text, right? Just I'm going to be the second text guy. And so trying to build that network. But I thought there were some really interesting things in there about, just taking some chances, meeting people that aren't like you, right? Who doesn't think like me? That'd be a really fun person to now get to go know, right? Get to go know.
Well, that goes back right to openness and being.
It all kind of, you can see the composite of the successful person, right? They're not going to fall for anything, right? But they're open to new ideas, right? They're out there extroverted, talking to other people, maybe getting new ideas, right? Maybe that's how they get them. And they're also sharing their new ideas. They're not neurotic. They don't have a lot of, they think they're of value. So they feel like they have a space. They walk in like they own the place, which is a good thing to fake. If you don't have it, fake that. Walk in like you own the place, and you're going to be okay. You're going to make friends. You're going to talk to people. Right. And there's just these things wrapped together. And what you would feel like if you described anybody that had those things, you go, yeah, if they're not a millionaire, I think they will be. I expect it.
Yeah, I want to. I'd love to for this topic. I'd love to wrap with this little story. It's they lead with risk tolerant, and I would just say when I was younger, I was in a business class, and they were talking about what makes an entrepreneur, right? And there were all these definitions, all of them fair, on the chalkboard at that time, whiteboard, all these names, adjectives, what create. So this is a 90-minute exercise, brainstorming, right? It was really interesting. It sticks with me all the time. All of them were true. These are all traits of successful entrepreneurs, blah blah blah. But it was like the ability to take the risk, right? Everyone has good ideas. Everyone has 5 good ideas, right? And it's the ability, do you really want to like chase that, right? Do you believe it so much and know that the upside of it? And that's why I think the study leads as well with risk tolerant. Like, hey, you can go chase something. And that's what I want folks to take from the show is that all the other things are great. You have 1 or 2 things that you love that's been on the back of your mind for a while. I just want to encourage you again, as Mike and I started the show with, you can go chase those dreams and not have to sacrifice your whole life for it and see if it has merit. It's called the side hustle. Can you gain momentum behind it? And just want to encourage folks, way better to do that and, again, fail 3 times than be laying on your deathbed and be like, I wonder if that was a good, you know what I mean? And so just want to encourage folks of those, be willing to like take a little risk in a way that you feel like is beneficial, strategic risk, as Mike mentioned. And so that would be the biggest takeaway as you try to fulfill your financial dreams. There's a high correlation. I said it's a high correlation between risk and reward, right? And so there's not a lot of money in things everybody's doing. So it is going against the grain a little and trying to find your little island that works for you. And so I think you'll find it to be extraordinarily rewarding, even if it's not financially rewarding the first time out, because folks typically have to start 2 or 3 companies before they make it, right? You learn every single time, right? And that's how you make progress to get to the money. They didn't say first time out of the gate to be a millionaire. It's having these traits: risk tolerant, extrovert, openness, conscientious, emotionally stable over a period of time, which makes you a self-made millionaire. Yep.
Somebody said the other day about fulfillment, which success is one way to define is self-fulfillment.
Yeah.
Right. And it said the 3 components of self-fulfillment were meaning, community, and purpose. Right. And so, it's interesting that it's in the journey, right? It's in the journey. And there's one thing I just want to share that it's just been resonating in my head lately. I tell myself this now. I go, Mike, you have all the resources you need, and all the people you need to know to take the next step.
Yeah.
And I'm going to find the resources and the other people I need along the way. But there's never a time I don't have what it takes to make the next step.
With the internet, you can get to anybody too. You can get to anybody, right? You can literally, the most famous person, go to Twitter, you can hit them up directly. It's amazing. So you can get to, if you feel like you can't, you can get to these days, you can get to anybody if you got to have it. So,
it's so true. Somebody told me once, they said, Mike, did you get this done? I go, I just couldn't. And their response was, I guess it just wasn't important enough.
Yeah.
And the opposite of that is, if you make it important enough, it is possible.
Yeah.
If you make it important enough, it is possible.
Yep.
You choose.
Well, again, appreciate the link to the article will be in the show. It's on my LinkedIn feed as well. So encourage you to just go look at it. And then it actually has a link to the whole study if you're really interested. But those 5 traits are the things that will get you to be a self-made millionaire as soon as possible. But again, with a little caveat, that doesn't necessarily guarantee happiness or peacefulness, but it could guarantee you a ton of money, right? Which money can make things easier. Good. And so 2 things before we wrap. One is, want to remember I.help. Appreciate our sponsor, I.help. Go to I.help. Set up your I.help account. $5 after you have a couple weeks for free. So go to I.help. The best $5 you're going to spend. Actually, you know what? Go have your Starbucks and get I.help. You can do it. Today's environment. With inflation, $5 is really, it's like $3 in the old days. So go again.
Last week. The old days were last week.
Go do that. Yes. Totally. And just want to, as we wrap up, as we go toward the Easter holiday, Mike and I both, men of faith, just want to encourage folks to, find some time over the weekend to appreciate the Easter holiday, right? Literally the greatest moment ever recorded in human history, where they reset the clock for this man who walked the earth and, his ascension into heaven. Amazing. I after 3 days.
The most counterintuitive approach to success in history.
Yes, to go die for others. So again, without being overly in your face, just encourage folks, if you're unsure, a great weekend to ask questions about your faith life. Not a more amazing weekend that we live in. And so just encourage you to spend some time contemplating that, and and
it's okay to be open-minded and less agreeable. It's okay. It's okay.
Listen, we have a big God. He can take all your questions. You can be a doubter. You can ask all the questions. God has big shoulders. No one's asking you blindly to jump off the side of the cliff. Amen?
You bet.
Any last things, Michael, before we go?
No, happy Easter.
Amen.
So much to contemplate.
Listen, we will see you next Wednesday. I have no idea what the topic's going to be. Appreciate everyone's
great.
Appreciate your time and energy. We're out of here. Success sauce. Happy Easter. Woo!